After a happy marriage of 34 years and two children, Barbara Mojica's husband decided he wanted an open marriage so he could have a dual life with a younger woman. She filed for divorce. She picked up the pieces. She met and married her soulmate and carved out a new life as an author and mentor.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Barbara Ann Mojica has a Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts degrees in history, as well as graduate certifications in school supervision and administration from C.W. Post College, Long Island University. Barbara has been a lifelong educator in the fields of early childhood and special education, having spent 40 years as a teacher, principal, and school district administrator. Barbara currently authors historical articles under her banner Passages for the Columbia Insider and is writing her own award-winning children's book series called Little Miss History. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'm very happy to be here, and I look forward to chatting with you and your listeners.
This is really interesting, this whole series. I looked at many of the things that you sent me regarding, the stories, and this is definitely different. And I appreciate that because different is always good, especially when this show's been on for 8 years and I haven't had a guest share something along these lines. So this is going to be exciting and I appreciate it. Let's start with your backstory, Barbara. As we open the show today regarding, how your life changed drastically, let's start with that, if you would, please.
Okay, well, there have been a few times in my life where things have changed drastically. If I go way back to the beginning, I grew up in a working class family, and neither of my parents were able to finish high school because they were children of the Depression. So the outlook for me was to try to become successful in some type of average working class type of job. And I was determined for that not to happen. As a young child, I loved school, I loved reading. And while my parents did encourage me in every way possible, they didn't have the financial means
Hmm.
for me to think about going to college or anything of that sort. But I persisted. I never gave up hope. I was determined. So, what happened was in high school, I was going toward a kind of commercial diploma, learning skills and secretarial skills,
Hmm.
business skills. And my parents thought that would be a good career choice for me. And I had already started working at 14. I got a job on Saturdays in a department store. And, I made my little savings
Hmm.
for the week. When I got to high school, I met a teacher who was coincidentally a history teacher. She was dynamic. She was
Hmm.
inspirational. She was tiny, a little tiny 4'11" bundle of energy who inspired me. And I always was curious about explorers and people who went to strange and foreign places and discovered all kinds of new things. But she really put me on fire. And she took me aside because she saw of my interest in history. And she said, you really have to go to college. And I said, well, my parents really don't have the means for that. And she said, if you put your nose to the grindstone, you'll find a way. And she told me about the opportunities. At that time, I was living in New York City, and there was a public college available on the basis of merit. So if you had the grades
Mhm.
and you got in, you would not have to pay tuition. You would just have to pay for your books and, ancillary expenses. So she says, you really have to do this. So that's exactly what I did. I wound up graduating with honors. I got into my first choice of that public college. So I wound up going to Hunter College for an undergraduate degree. And I worked super, super hard. I was so into it that I managed to graduate in 3 years. I took all kinds of extra courses during the summer. And during the summer, I met another professor who, unbeknownst to me, put in my name for a scholarship for graduate school.
Hmm.
I got a scholarship to graduate school. So there I was on my journey. So I went from not having the slightest bit of hope of
Really?
being able to achieve this to being, a graduate student and then graduating. So that was the first part of my journey. There are other times where I faced kind of daunting circumstances. I started teaching because after I got my graduate degrees in history, I realized that I didn't want to be part of that kind of ivory tower academic world where I would be doing research all the time and never connecting with people and being able to share my enthusiasm about history directly with people. So I started teaching and I did a 180. So when I started teaching, I was working with elementary school students. So I really didn't have that much of an opportunity to spend most of my time with history, but I was always working on that in the background. But after I had been teaching 8 years, I was told by the administration, I took a leave because after 8 years of marriage, I had my first child. And when I went to go back after the leave, I was told, well, mothers should really stay home with their children. And I said, this is not going to work for me. I'm going to have both. So I just told her I will be in next week to sign my contract. And I left it at that. She backed down. The next week I went in and I signed my contract.
Good
and
for you.
and there I was. So that was one time uh, during my career. I became a little bit disappointed. I was teaching in a private school, and I didn't see the needs of all children being met. So I began thinking about special education. So I went back to school and I took my certification in special education and I started working with children with really severe needs. And that brought me the satisfaction that I was seeking in teaching. I had become a little bit, disoriented,
Mhm.
disappointed. So that was another point, a turning point in my career, but it brought me great satisfaction. It also was very, very challenging. So it opened up new doors to me in the sense that I became exposed to a whole new world of people who were working in education in different areas of education. I met physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and it was a very much a collaborative group effort. So I learned how to work with so many different types of people. And I moved through that. I worked with severely disabled children, physically and mentally, autistic children, crack cocaine babies, Down syndrome,
Hmm.
all kinds of areas. And I really, really became immersed in that. So by this time, my children were older, and I had more of an opportunity to spend the hours that I needed working at the career. And the opportunity arose to become principal of the special ed school that I was working in. So I became principal, and I had the opportunity to learn so much about all types of disabilities, work with parents, work with all of these therapists, and really being able to zero in on the needs of these kids. And I did that for a while, and then an opportunity arose for me to become a administrator within the system for preschool children. So in that position, I would be able to work with the parents, find the placement, the appropriate placement for the child with a preschooler with special needs, and then work in all dimensions with the schools for special needs, with the parents, with the children. So that was the direction my career was at. But then I had another setback. The city decided to do a major reorganization under a new mayor who decided that he was going to revamp the entire Department of Education. Since I had only been there a short time, my head was on the chopping block, and I lost my position, and I didn't know where I was going to go at that point. So I was out of work. Um, I began looking for opportunities. So for a short time, I worked one on one with different private agencies of children with special needs. But I wanted a full-time position, so I eventually wound up in a public school uh, as a special educator doing all kinds of things. So I was no longer a supervisor, I was a teacher. I wound up doing itinerant teaching. I wound up doing a Wilson reading program for dyslexic students. I wound up working in a team teaching classroom with special needs and general needs kids. So I wound up doing all kinds of different things, which gave me even more new perspective. So, I thought this was going to be a horrible thing, but in effect, it opened up all different kinds of new opportunities to work with different people. So I think my message is you never know, one door closes and another one opens. And I'm reminded of a quote by TJ Jakes: if you always do what you've always done, always be where you've always been.
Hmm. That's good.
So if you don't allow yourself to be open to change, you won't have so many opportunities that could possibly be open to you, and things that you could never even think about or realize or conceive that could possibly happen. So I think you always have to be open to change, to learn from the past again, which is, going into my philosophy. You need to take things from the past in order to understand where you are today and where you could possibly go in the future.
Yes, that's very good, and I appreciate you sharing your backstory as well as encouraging the audience along those lines because, as you said at one point, we never know when change comes, and you can't necessarily be prepared for it, but you are prepared within yourself to accept the things that may come as change, correct?
Right,
At
exactly.
one point in your life, as I mentioned at the top of this show, you had another abrupt emotional and personal change, and that was when your husband left you abruptly. How did you pick up the pieces at that point?
Well, I think my personality kind of kicked in. There was always within me a determination and a stubbornness,
Hmm.
perhaps a persistence, that when something bad happened to me, I always said, okay, I'm not going to let this hold me back. I'm just going to move forward. So it was a very difficult time for me. I just said to myself, well, I'm going to move forward. So I talked to people. I tried to get the help that I needed. But within me, I just said, I'm going to go out. I'm going to move forward. So I did. I went out. I met with people, let my family kind of help me along. It was a very difficult time because
Hmm.
not only was I going through the emotional upheaval with my own mate, but my two children at this point
Of
were
course,
adults and
of
they were
course.
about to get married. So
Oh,
we had
goodness.
all of this,
Right, right.
all of this happened like within a 2-year span. So so in a sense, I was kind of pushed forward, and I kind of had to go on. Uh, but I went out. I started dating. And I said I'm just going to try to resume a normal lifestyle, and that's what I did. And it was only a couple of years after that I met my soulmate, who is my husband now, and I've never been happier. And
That's
again,
wonderful.
things
Right.
work out for the best.
Now, you made a statement that I'd like you to maybe expound just a little bit on, and that is this: we are all history makers. It is impossible to understand what is happening today if we do not understand how we got here. Yesterday plus today equals tomorrow. Your motto is, if you don't understand your history, you don't know what you're talking about. Just expound a minute or so on that.
Okay, well, think about the word history, and it's not so much people see the word story in it, so they say, well, history is stories. But some people think of history as just a bunch of dates and
Hmm.
events and facts, which is far from the truth. The real meaning of history is that it forces each of us the Greek word it means for history is to seek, to inquire, to look within. And history forces us to look deep within ourselves, to understand ourselves in terms of our own family, our community, and then the wider world around us. So think about what history is. Everything has a history.
That's right.
Anything in the world has a history. We don't just suddenly exist. All of us have a background. So in our family, we have our ancestors who came before us. And then we have the people who we're living with now. And then we will have those who come after us, our children, our grandchildren, our grandchildren. So we're all part of this
Hmm.
network. The same thing in our community. How did our communities begin? Well,
Mm.
they were people that were drawn together by some common bond,
Right.
whether that be an ethnic bond, whether that be an economic bond, whether that be a religious bond. They bonded together for certain common reasons, and part of that was their history that bound them together. The cultural heritage that they experienced together and then extended and built out, and the world is the same thing. And when we take our communities, all of our communities are a network that belong to a larger world and a global picture. So I see history as evolutionary rather than revolutionary. most of history has evolved from things that happened before that we had no control over. Things that happened are now we have some control over if we know and attempt to understand them. And what can we do? We can take what happened in the past, we can learn from what we didn't like, we can try to avoid repeating mistakes, but we can take that, we can build for ourselves a framework to live better right now in the present, and then try to prepare something that's a legacy, a framework for those who will come in the future. So we hope that our children will become engaged citizens who will work hard to create a better world for themselves and their children. And today, history is very different from the history of the past. Okay, everything is changing so fast, and the way things have changed impact the events that are going on. It's very different from 100 years before. And
Absolutely.
history encompasses all of that. History is a topic, a focus about something, but it's also the context. What else is happening around that? So you have to look, if you're talking about an event that happened 100 years ago, you have to look at what was going on then.
Right,
Who were the
right.
people? How were they connected? And what were the actual documents? There's such a misnomer today about information, real and true information. When we study history, we have to look at the real documents, the letters, the journals, the diaries, the artifacts, the fossils that we have. That's the real data, not what somebody writes about it 50 years later, or not somebody's opinion about what happened without, social media, advanced technology has done so much to change the way we interpret what is going on today. And that gets me very upset because I don't think schools are doing a very good job uh, of teaching about history, about teaching government, teaching civics, and they don't teach children to become good critical thinkers.
And
They
that
teach a lot about curriculum that meets a certain narrow focus in trying to bring students up to certain common standards, but they don't teach children how to think, the process of thinking.
that was very well stated, and I appreciate how you brought that from history to current. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want you to share the exciting part of your story, which is your mission and what you have done for children and what is happening with your book series when we return.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
So, Barbara, thank you so much for what you have shared already regarding understanding a bit more about history. Now you're going to share what your mission is. And your mission, as it is stated here, is to prepare children to become critical thinkers. Wow, that really had an impact on me when I read that. Also, to become problem solvers and responsible members of a community that will include the leaders of tomorrow. So, share a little bit about what you mean by that.
Okay, well, critical thinking. What is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the ability to focus on a problem or a topic, to be able to take it apart, observe, and look at data or information, to be able to analyze that information, to then be able to infer and extend that information out into other situations, and then to be able to communicate that message or information to others. And by doing all of that, a child develops the ability to successfully solve problems within their own life and in the wider world, in the workforce, of course, later on when they become adults. So I think that schools, as I mentioned before, are now trying to meet arbitrary standards in very uniform and regimented ways. We have such a diverse population of children that learn in so many different ways and have so many obstacles to learning in their life right now, whether that be emotional, whether that
Mhm.
be a language problem, whether it be situational family problem, that the schools can possibly address all of these needs. And I think they spend too much time on areas in which certain powers that be, whether that be the school administration or leaders in the community, whether it be a certain political bent, whether it be a certain religious bent. I think that parents have to be the first teachers, and parents should be allowed a lot more leeway in choosing the way their children learn.
Excellently put. Thank you. Your books. Tell us about your books and your website, which go hand in hand. The Little Miss History book has received many awards, so share with us about that.
Well, my books are a kind of combination of all my life experiences. So
Hmm.
I love history, I love teaching. When I retired, realized right away was not going to be the type to sit in the rocking chair and look at the sky. So my husband, who was really another person who loves history, is an artist. My husband has been drawing his entire life, and he has written his own books. He has illustrated books, and he has spent a lot of time in the art world and in the children's area of that world. So he designed the character Little Miss History based on a younger version of me.
Mm.
She's a cartoon-like character.
Okay.
Rose-colored glasses to reflect a positive outlook, always looking on the bright side of things. Camping outfit because she's a hiker, an explorer, an adventurer. Uh, Hiking boots, oversized. They're just in memory of my father's big feet. The pigtails, the way I used to wear them as a teenager. So young, composite of me who kind of reflects what I think children might be able to look at and see themselves in her. So I want them to be enthusiastic. I want them to be curious. I want them to take the books and explore. So she guides children through the narrative.
Mm.
The books are very much interactive. They cover history, but they also cover on many other areas of learning at the same time. So my books cover some iconic sites like the Statue of Liberty or Independence Hall. They also cover national parks and explore nature and animals. So there might be Sequoia National Park, or it might be Mount Rushmore. They might be international in focus. So some of my books focus on military history. Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum, that wonderful battleship had such an integral part in history. World War One, World War Two, the Vietnam War, the Korean conflict, the space shuttle. It actually was involved in space recovery of vessels. It even served as headquarters for the FBI during 9/11. So it has a tremendously involved history. I also investigate and reflect on different issues with children, like Native
Oh, good.
American
Good.
rights and the rights of African Americans and certain people who have been also not able to be acknowledged at that point in history.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to have children exposed to all of that. And I ask them questions. I guide them to participate in discussions. And I encourage them to go out and investigate in a multitude of different areas, whether it be prehistory, like La Brea tar pits, or whether it be immigration, like Ellis Island, whatever the topic might be.
And how does this help children today become problem solvers? Give us an example.
Well, to solve problems, for instance, in my Sequoia National Park book, we're talking about the beautiful sequoia trees, but we talk about science. We talk about how the trees grow. We compare and contrast them. We talk about explorers who came and settled there, but we talk about what's happening there today. It's the most polluted national park in the entire national
Mm,
park system. What's
wow.
causing this? Can the children see any way to solve these problems? So we
Okay.
start to talk about environment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in my Mount Rushmore book, we talk about Native American rights. We talk about how the land was taken from the Lakota Sioux. Was that right? Was that wrong? Now the Lakota are building their own monument to Mount Crazy Horse, to their leader. And should we honor one of these monuments? Should we have two? How important are the rights of all people? So all of these are the kinds of issues that I want them to start
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
thinking about. A Mount Vernon book, we talk about slavery. We talk about George Washington and how he felt about slavery,
Oh,
how the,
excellent.
how the attitudes have changed.
Yes,
In
yes.
my Monticello book, we talk about Jefferson and how he was a slave owner. The book is dedicated to the descendants of Jefferson, some of which were slaves. So we talk about all types of issues in a non-judgmental but
Good.
open
Yes.
format, and we want children to have an opportunity to think about these things and not
Excellent.
being given pre-formatted
Yes,
opinions, just
yes.
to go out, critically think, and investigate on their own.
Excellent. I'm so glad that you made that clarification. You also have available teaching resources for parents and teachers and speaking engagements. But before you talk a little bit about that, tell us what's in the near future as far as your books are concerned. What do you have that you think might be exciting to look forward to?
Oh, I have a whole bunch of things in various stages of development.
Hmm.
My books are multimedia, so in almost all instances, I go out with my husband, who is my illustrator, and we do the photography. So we
Mm.
go to the sites The books include photography, they include portraits, as well as in Little Miss, who is narrating the
Mm-hmm,
story.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I have all kinds of things in progress. In the future, the next book after Monticello, which is the most recent release, is going to be something that's very near where I live. The USS Slater is a destroyer escort ship is really one of the only remains of these destroyer escorts who played such an important part in World War II, protecting the seas for both the merchant ships and for our military ships. So I'm going to have a book on the USS Slater. I visited Gettysburg recently, and foresee a book about Gettysburg in the future as well. And then there are a few others that are in various stages of development.
Well, your excitement certainly comes across. My goodness. I mean, you love history. And I can see how, with an attitude like that, you want people to love history as well. And the way you illustrate it, the way you reflect on what history was to how it affects us today. And in a children's book, oh my goodness, that's what a wonderful idea. What a wonderful concept. And I looked at some of the pictures that you have on your website, and they are remarkable. So, hats off to the illustrator as well.
Oh, yeah, it's such could not do it without the illustration.
Absolutely. So, in conclusion, what message, if any, do you have for the audience today?
My motto, of course, is near and dear to me. If you don't know your history, you don't know what you're talking about because you can't understand, again, how you got to today if you don't know where
Right,
you were
right.
yesterday. And you want to build a better tomorrow. So you've got to really work on what is good and improve it, what is bad and eliminate it, and leave something better for our children and grandchildren in the future. We can't let the world the way it is right now so divisive. We have to come together. We have to be objective. We have to analyze, and we have to allow ourselves the freedom to investigate, to study, but we also have to listen. We have to learn to listen. I think the best kind of parent is a parent that knows how to listen
Hmm.
to their child. And I think all of us would benefit if we did less talking and more listening.
And how many books do you have?
I have 14 books in the Little Miss History Travels 2 series. I had a trilogy book that I did for New York City teachers who requested that I do that. So 3 of my New York City books are put together in one volume, The Adventures of Little Miss History.
Okay.
And then I have a coloring and activity book that also includes famous quotes from history.
And they are all available on Amazon, your website?
Yes, the best place to go for all of my resources is my website,
Okay.
littlemisshistory.com. You
Okay.
can find the books. You can find my blog. On my blog, I have tips for parents, teachers, authors, and I review books twice a week
Oh,
for
good.
children.
Good.
I have a YouTube channel, and I have 2-minute teacher lessons for children and parents. So the parents can take the lesson and supplement science, math, history, citizenship, uh, almost anything you can imagine. And I have on that website history videos for kids and travel videos, all kinds of things related to my work. And all my social media channels are there as well. They can also talk to me with an instant chat or send me a message. So if they go there, they can find almost any of the resources that I offer parents, teachers, children.
That's excellent. It's all there in one spot. And I thank you for sharing that. The resources will be available to me as a grandma for my grandchildren. And as you said, certainly for parents and for teachers. And again, they are done so well. I encourage my audience to go have a look at the website, start there, pick the books that you think might be the ones for you. So, do you have any special offer for our listeners today, or is all that available on the website?
Well, I have different offers. So for somebody who wants to start, I have on my blog a link to 14 reasons you need to know history.
Okay.
For authors, I have a couple of videos on um, tips for authors.
Oh, good.
I have articles on my blog as well. For parents, uh, the books are a great starting point if uh, your child has a particular interest in any of those fields: prehistory, La Brea
Mm-hmm,
tar
mm-hmm.
pits, military history, one of those books. Or if your child is studying something in particular at school, to supplement that. And the 2-minute teacher, of course, those lessons are great for parents
Hmm.
or teachers
Okay.
on the YouTube channel who want to,
Excellent.
supplement.
Well, thank you. You answered all my questions, and you also are available, as you said, for the chat on your website if somebody has any specific questions for you, whether as a teacher or a parent. So I appreciate you being available for that as well. And I thank you for what you shared today, and I thank you, Barbara, for being on Never, Ever Give Up Hope.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.